Aging muscle becomes less responsible to anabolic stimuli such as amino acids, insulin, and mechanical loading. Muscle protein synthesis following a protein-rich meal or resistance training session is blunted. A failure of the mTOR pathways. Everything in our body runs along certain pathways, and these pathways are blocked or enabled by certain by certain enzyme systems, and this mTOR is one of these signaling pathways. It just doesn't work as well anymore. And this leads to a decreased ability to rebuild muscle even when nutrients are present. The second one relates to muscle stem cells. These are cells that will grow muscle cells, and whenever as we age, the number of these muscle stem cells decrease. And that is why we lose muscle continuously, especially after age 50, 60, we go into this muscle decline. A third reason is inflammation. Whenever there's inflammation in the body, and you can measure this in the laboratory, it leads to protein breakdown, and this will obviously result in muscle loss. The second paragraph you read there, mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are little parts in the cell that are responsible for the energy generation of a muscle cell or a heart cell. Heart also is a muscle. And that energy production in children runs very well. As we age, it gets less and less effective, and more of inflammatory components, that is what you read there, reactive oxygen species, are created, which further fuels this whole negative spin. This whole situation is often fueled by wrong dietary choices, environmental toxins, and microbiome imbalance. Dietary factors, we are flooded, for instance, with, if you buy stuff that is packaged, it is always stuffed with omega-6 fatty acids, which have a pro-inflammatory reaction. Environmental toxins, if somebody smokes, for instance, with the tobacco that you inhale, you also inhale, for instance, cadmium. Cadmium is a heavy metal that will work like sand in a ball bearing. It just blocks it, and it reminds me of a patient in whom I followed the cadmium levels in his blood. He was a smoker, and after 3 weeks of detoxification, a detoxification program, the cadmium levels slowly came down to the normal range. Microbiome imbalance is also very important. What is going on in your gut? We do not feel this, and that is the curse of this whole situation. You do not feel these things, but it doesn't mean that the process is not ongoing. And there are laboratory markers that you could use to see how skewed the situation is in your gut system, which contributes largely to the inflammatory situation in our bodies. To make this clear, when scientists, or let me take an example, the synthesis of insulin that people use and to control their diabetic situation is generated by germs that are harnessed for bacteria that are harnessed to produce insulin. They have been programmed that way. And they live in silos, large containers. So these germs, they produce these substances in continuation, and you can harvest a lot. But the interesting point is that the density of germs in those biochemically engineered structures doesn't come close to the gut microbial density that we carry in our body. So I just want to point out how incredibly potent this the gut factor is. All right, neurogenic factors. We have a progressive loss of motor neurons. That means nerves that connect from the spinal cord to the muscles that we use. And larger motor units must innervate abandoned muscle fibers, but they become orphans, but it doesn't work that well anymore. Hormonal decline. I will just go quickly through this because otherwise it will take too much time. There's a decline in testosterone in male and female, a DHEA, growth hormone. And growth hormone is important because that is what peaks during the night, and that's why sleep is important to maintain muscle mass. Mitochondrial dysfunction, I think we've touched on that already. Now, what can we do in terms of lifestyle? The best way is not to age, but if that doesn't work, and then we have to implement some lifestyle and non-pharmaceutical prevention strategies. And the good news is sarcopenia is not inevitable. You can fight it very successfully. The queen of interventions is progressive resistance training, and we won't go into the details here. As we age, we need physical training. We just need it like water and air. We need that exercise. Point number 2 is the optimal protein intake. It has a certain effect when you do it with training. Unfortunately, and that is terribly bad news, we cannot eat in order to produce muscle mass. Wouldn't that be a great way out? It isn't. Anti-inflammatory and mitochondrial nourishing diets, what we're looking at is try to cut out all omega-6 seed oils. Try to avoid products that you consume on a daily basis that have these omega-6s. These are all the plant oils except for, do you know which plant components have omega-3s, which counterbalance the omega-6s in the plant world? Sorry? We've got linseed, flaxseed is omega-3, and then we've got walnuts. So walnuts should be in your, and linseed, try to incorporate this on a daily basis to counteract the omega-6 effect. That would be, I think, the biggest takeaway. Sunlight also has an effect on muscle function, and if you have exposure to sunlight, that again connects to sleep, which connects to growth hormone output, which sustains and supports muscle cell growth. I just mentioned here sleep and circadian optimization. So try to have a regular bedtime sequence, a sleep sequence. The body can be conditioned, and that is extremely helpful. Try to avoid toxins, and in practical terms this means, if possible, do not consume stuff that is packed in plastic stuffs, plastic wraps, plastic bottles, because you, have you heard the term microplastics? They now find it even in the human brain, which is just bad news. Try to avoid drinking water out of plastic bottles. Bad news. A single bottle doesn't mean anything, but if you do it on a regular basis. Now, what I found very encouraging in this negative list here was cold exposure increases mitochondrial biogenesis. That means if you expose yourself to cold, it will increase the number of these little power plants that we have in our cells, as well as heat. Heat has another mechanism. It upregulates heat shock proteins and growth hormone secretion. Isn't that interesting? So the ideal thing would be if you jump into your jacuzzi at 9 p.m. and you heat that jacuzzi up, and you'll sleep like a baby and you will have a burst of growth hormone, or you'll go into your sauna or infrared cabin or whatever you have at home. Both work very well. Walking is a very interesting component, because the beauty of using your muscles is that sugar can enter the muscle without insulin, especially after a meal when insulin rises and you walk, you can, blood sugar rises, insulin rises, you can bring down that blood sugar curve. And if you move a lot during the day, then you have a profound effect on this whole system. A last word here on supplementation. Muscle growth, I think you've heard about creatine. Bodybuilders use creatine. There is no need to use creatine except you do heavy workouts, but what creatine does, it helps you to perform better than if you hadn't taken it, and therefore your muscle growth will be better thereafter. Mitochondrial renewal, the most important one in that line is the omega-3, the anti-inflammatory and the hormonal support. You've got curcumin, you find that in curry, magnesium, vitamin D, sunshine. And then again, the gut. The best you can do for your gut is to eat, as far as I'm concerned, is eat sauerkraut, not big portions. In a teaspoon of sauerkraut juice, you find more germs than you find in any supplement that you could buy on the market for a fraction of the price. So I would like to leave you with another substance that you can eat. It enhances neuromuscular junction health, so where the nerves meet the muscle. It sharpens memory and focus, and it is particularly useful in retaining motor coordination, which is important in old age. As you walk, you become more and more dependent on visual clues, because you need to know where you put your foot. You cannot walk blind without losing your balance. Does anybody know what this is here? That is lion's mane mushroom. We will, in one of the next health nuggets, we will look at some tests that we can do to find out whether we are sarcopenic. So the take home is move, make some dietary adjustments, and go out in the sun, and you will be blessed.